Hi everyone, it's Kevin here. I want to go over some of the requirements for your last assignment, and more importantly, this last assignment introduces crystal reports, and there is a requirement in your case for perfect crease to produce a couple of reports. Create an application using VB or C Sharp and create a couple of reports. More than anything, this is intended to test your database design to prove to the client that it actually works and you can produce a usable business object for use by the business in their processes. So I've got this. First off, I've got this really big PowerPoint pack. It's a pile of slides from Joel Murak. You'll remember the Murak book, the VB book that you used, both for Bill's class and for my class. For those of you that are in the 3-year program, you would have taken it last year. Those of you in second year will take it next semester. It's Murak's VB. There's also Murak's C Sharp. Both books have data chapters in them that can cover a lot of this material, and I've taken some of the best slides, and or at least some of the slides that I think will be most helpful to you for reviewing some of the stuff that you covered in VB1 with Bill when you were connecting to databases. So first off, let's just take a look at just some of these things that I've held in this slide deck. I'm not going to go through all these slides, but some of this is going to look familiar to you. This is Visual Studio actually starting a VB application, and we will take a look at the data sources window and actually adding data sources to a project and then carrying on from there. Some of the more key features, again, I'm going to review all this in a demo here shortly. You want to make sure that you are actually using, rather than what you did in Bill's class where you would have used an instance of a server, you're actually going to use your local instance of SQL Server, in fact SQL Server Express. Taking a look at some of these things, which should be pretty familiar to you in terms of what you've dealt with through Intro to VB. We're going to take, not Intro to VB, but VB1. We're going to take a look at creating a data source for a project. I'm going to actually go through it using C Sharp just to be different, but I'm also going to give you a template of code behind the form for VB if you're more comfortable with VB. So I want to just run this application. This is actually, when you take a look at assignment 8, you'll see that it's going to ask you to create a report based on a SQL Server database, the MMA, Mike Murak and Associates books database, and this is the report that I'm after. This is one that was done by a student last year, you know, neatly formatted, and of course some of you are shuddering right now because you can't look at something like this and not start to think about how much work went into aligning all of these columns, getting the detail area of the report body set up just right. Multiple pages to this report with headers, column headers. I've never been a fan of stacking them like this. I would have preferred to see customer name, invoice number. So those are all, you know, you could edit all those, and I would suggest maybe you should. You'll notice down here in the report footer, there's a page number. We also have, that's actually on the page footer, sorry, not the report footer. This is in the report footer. At the end of the report, we have a grand total of all the invoices for customers. And so this is all the invoices by customer, shows the individual invoice numbers and a subtotal and so on. I'll just get back to the first page up here. And of course, this is a field that was added as the header. This would be the report header, and then a date field as well. So all of this formatting for display, of course, can all be done in Design View, just like you've done with Access. It's pretty much the same idea, and about as finicky in terms of getting it done. The really cool thing is that, you know, whether you design this in VB or C Sharp, you're going to be working with this control. This whole thing we're looking at right here is a report viewer control. and all of this stuff is built into the control. The pagination, we can zoom, we can actually find different customers. So I'm going to look for Smith in this report. Okay, there we go. There's Arthur Smith. Cancel out of that. I've got this tree view which I can toggle on and off, which allows me to get to individual groups. I can just look through. This is all part of this robust report viewer control, and this is of course what you're going to be looking for assignment 8 to use as a control, and certainly this is the control that you'd use for the case. The case, we're going to work out things a little bit differently because there's 2 reports, and you don't really want 2 report viewers. But the other interesting thing, I mean, right in HIS, we have the opportunity to print this report. So, you know, we've got a print dialog that just comes up from this, and we can print this report directly. And of course, for the case, you will be including printed copies of this report in your final report, which would be presented to Roman and the team. So I'm just going to close this for now, and we want to get started with Crystal Reports and starting an application. So I'm going to close this. A couple of things we've got to be aware of first off. You know, Crystal Reports is third party. It's originally a company called Business Objects. It's now held by SAP, and it has been around for quite a while, and you'll see Crystal Reports in high demand in a lot of job postings. Well, Crystal Reports, unfortunately, being a third-party software, doesn't necessarily dance to the tune of people such as Microsoft, and you can implement Crystal Reports for a number of different technologies. In terms of interoperability with Visual Studio, it works, but we have to jump through a few hoops. So a couple of ground rules though when it comes to Crystal Reports and SQL Server. We're going to use, hopefully, as I said, you're going to use Visual Studio 2010 or higher, 2010 or 2012, and you're going to be using Crystal Reports for Visual Studio for 2010. I'm using it right now as part of my 2012 Visual Studio instance. Couple things though, with regards to SQL Server, which is the type of database you're running, the database can be attached directly to a SQL Server server, which is, you know, in a distributed environment, that kind of makes sense. The problem is you're going to be submitting these things over DC Connect, and I of course want to run them. So I'm looking for you to have local databases. I'm looking for you to have a copy of your database and the data set in your project, and then that report is going to be set to, based on that local data set. The only problem is Crystal Reports can't be directly attached to a local data set. They have to be set at runtime. So there's a little bit of code that you have to write, and I will give you an outline of that code to use for both C# and VB. It's subtly different, but so much the same. So there's 3 basic steps. One of them's massive, and but you've played with reports before. But first off, you want to create your solution, whatever it's going to be, VB or C#, and then build the data set for the report. So create a local data set, which shouldn't be anything new to you. This is something you've done, you did a number of times in VB1 with Bill. Next thing you want to do is add a report designer. So it's actually a component that you're going to add to the solution, and then you design the report template based on that existing data set in the project. And then the final bit is adding that Crystal Report Viewer and then connecting it somehow to that report designer template. And in this case, we're going to be connecting it through code. There is a property, the data source property of the report that needs to be set, and we're going to do that programmatically. Once the report's added to the project, you can view it just as we just did the one and send it to the printer, of course. The only thing with assigning the report at runtime is that you can't show the actual data, but it does some interesting things to give you a representation of what the data is going to look like. And I've thrown a couple quick ones together just to show you what they're going to end up looking like, and we're going to go through the steps right now. As I mentioned, Crystal Reports is held by another company. They're not beholden to Microsoft. They can be included and operate with a number of different technologies and development environments. And right now, they really work well with the .NET Framework 2.0. which is quite old. But we can make some adjustments. It's actually compatible to up to 4.0, and right now, if you're running 2012, actually if you're running 2010, you're probably running on the 4.5 framework. So we'll have to make a change there. And we've got to do a few things in terms of preparation for running this third-party software from within Visual Studio. So we're going to modify the, first off, what we're going to do is modify the project's app config file. We're going to go ahead and use this interesting little mixed mode tag. It basically is the use legacy version 2 runtime activation policy equals true, and then we'll that in a combination of setting their target framework to the .NET Framework 4, not 4 client. Typically client is the default, and not 4.5. We'll do those two things, and we should be able to work straight on with Crystal Reports in Visual Studio. You can use Crystal Reports to connect to SQL Server. They can connect to Access, Excel, any other anything based on ADO.NET datasets. And datasets can be based themselves on a number of different types of objects, business objects and collections of your design. Lots of formatting modifications available to you. This is a very robust tool. You can add any kind of special calculated fields. You can adjust all of the colors, alignments, column headings, all of that. And of course, you have all of the different areas of the report available to you. One of the things I do like to see, and we'll take a look at this when we get to the demo, is I like to see the window state of any application that runs a Crystal report set to maximize, so that this thing does fill the screen. It's easy to view the entire report. I've got a step-by-step process here, and this is really what we're going to do. I'm going to go through a demo in the second video in this series, and we're going to go step by step, creating the data set. We're going to add the Crystal report template, and we'll use the wizard and ensure that we connect to the project data. And then we're going to go ahead and make our design changes. That I'm going to leave you to. I know you've worked with Access reports quite a bit in first year and maybe since then. So that will be a time-consuming thing. Nothing in terms of any new concepts there at all, just a new tool to use. And then, of course, we'll add the report viewer, and we'll write some code to fill that data set and assign the data set to that report object. So that's it for this one. That's the overview of what we're going to look at. The next film, I'm going to actually go through a demo of creating a application to host Crystal Reports template and viewer.